The first hive went up with a vicious whoosh, flames swallowing the white boxes, as bees poured out in a black, furious cloud.
Burn them all! Every last one!
Ma'am, we have the order, but are you sure about this?
I said burn them! These pests are a public hazard!
Robert Haldane stood 20 yards away, phone raised, recording everything in silence.
Film all you want. The law is on my side.
You have no idea what you have just done.
Linda Whitford only laughed, turning her back to watch the columns of smoke rise into the clear morning sky. 80 hives, 400 queens. 2 decades of careful breeding, reduced to ash in under an hour. But Robert's eyes held something colder than the flames, the quiet patience of a man who knows exactly what comes next. As the last embers crackled, Robert turned his back on the smoking field and walked toward his house at the edge of the property.
Where do you think you are going? I want you to see what happens when you defy me.
You've just killed the one thing this valley can't live without. That's not defiance, Linda. That's a death sentence.
Spare me the dramatics. Your little bugs were a menace. The HOA will thank me.
He didn't reply. The crunch of his boots on gravel was the only answer she deserved. Inside his farmhouse kitchen, Robert bypassed the coffee pot and went straight to a locked filing cabinet in the corner. He pushed aside a stack of apiculture journals and withdrew a faded manila folder. Inside were maps, permits, and a thick contract stamped with the state seal, documents he hadn't looked at in years.
He ran a thumb over the embossed seal and let out a slow breath, right where I left them.
His eyes settled on a clause buried in the fine print, and the faintest smirk crossed his lips. He tucked the folder into his flannel jacket and finally poured that cup of coffee. Now he was ready. The next morning, the sun had barely cleared the ridge when Robert's phone began vibrating relentlessly across the kitchen table. The screen showed 17 missed calls, all from the same number, Valley Almond Co-op emergency line. He took a slow sip of coffee, then thumbed the answer button.
Robert, it's Tom Aldrich. The pollination survey just came in. We've got a 60% drop in viable blossoms from yesterday.
I was expecting your call.
Expecting? Then you already know. Your queens are the only certified strain for the organic blocks. Without them, we're looking at a $4 million loss.
Linda Whitford torched them. 80 hives, gone.
A long, hollow pause stretched over the line, followed by the sound of something hitting a desk.
Dear God. The co-op board, my God. Robert, my wife's on that board. This is going to ruin us.
Let me handle that. You just make sure the growers know where the blame really lies.
Handle it? Robert, the flowers are dropping unpollinated. By next week, the entire organic block will be a write-off.
I held the only state-sanctioned pollination contract for this county. That contract required my live hives to be on site by March 1st.
March 1st? That's tomorrow. So the contract is dead. The co-op is exposed for the full $4.2 million crop loss.
Linda Whitford voided that contract when she burned my hives. The state will hold her accountable, not the growers.
Robert lifted the manila folder and pulled out a letter bearing the state agriculture seal.
You are saying the HOA president just handed the state a reason to sue her personally. Does she even know what she's done?
Not yet, but she will. By the end of the week, every almond grower in the valley will know her name.
The line went quiet, save for a sharp exhale that sounded more like a prayer than a breath. Robert closed the folder and set it beside his empty cup, the faintest trace of resolve settling in his jaw. Miles away, the almond orchards began to show the first signs of collapse, blossoms browning at the edges, unvisited. The state inspector found Robert standing alone in the blackened apiary, the burnt frames still smoking.
Mr. Haldane, I am Angela Cross, State Agriculture. The co-op filed an emergency report regarding a pollination contract breach.
The contract is dead. Linda Whitford burned my hives.
Angela knelt in the ash and lifted a partially intact frame. The distinctive queen cell cups told the whole story.
USDA certified Haldane strain, nothing else in the county. Whoever ordered this just ended their career.
She didn't just end a career. She ended the valley's pollination security.
The state will hold her fully liable. This is criminal negligence at minimum.
Robert gave a single, slow nod, his face unreadable. But behind his eyes flickered the patience of a man who had already set his trap. He knew this was only the beginning. The local news broke the story mid-afternoon. Across the valley, televisions glowed with the same grim headline. In her HOA office, Linda Whitford tilted her head at the screen and let out a dry laugh.
A few dead bees, and suddenly it's a crisis. This has nothing to do with me.
Her phone buzzed before she could change the channel. The caller ID read Valley Almond Co-op.
Mrs. Whitford, your HOA's destruction of the Haldane apiary just triggered a $4.2 million default. We're holding you personally responsible.
You have no proof. I was enforcing HOA safety codes. You can't hang that loss on my shoulders.
She hung up and drove home with a practiced sneer. But the house was too quiet.
Linda, I saw the news. I am on the co-op board. If this traces back to you, we could lose everything.
Trace back? I burned some beehives, not the whole agricultural economy. Let them prove it.
But the shake in her voice didn't match her words. For the first time, Linda Whitford felt the floor crack.
They filed the official claim. As a board member, I am named personally. $4.2 million.
You never touched those hives. I gave the order. The HOA backed me for safety reasons.
My vote on the resolution is in their file. They're calling it willful negligence.
We'll fight it. I'll call my lawyer. They can't touch our house, our savings.
The lawyer already called. The co-op moved to pierce the corporate veil. Our personal assets are exposed.
The veneer of control finally cracked. Linda's hand shook as she set down her phone.
This can't be happening. I was protecting our community. Everyone agreed the bees were a hazard.
The only person who can stop this is Robert Haldane, and you burned his hives in front of him.
Silence swallowed the kitchen. Outside, the first dead petals from the orchards blew against the window. It was no longer a distant crop failure. It was inside their home and closing fast. By morning, the story had spread beyond the valley. 3 news vans idled at the curb. Linda Whitford stepped out of her Range Rover to a wall of microphones. A voice cut through immediately. Mrs. Whitford, did you personally order the destruction of the apiary linked to the almond collapse?
I was protecting this community from a swarm hazard. The HOA board fully supported that action.
The follow-up came sharper, louder. Were you aware those bees held the state's only pollination contract?
That was never disclosed. How could I know about some agriculture contract?
Inside the office, board members huddled around a speakerphone, faces taut with fear. A voice rose from the group. Linda's recklessness just invited a class action suit. We have to discuss her role. Outside, a single question pierced the noise. Are you still fit to lead this community, Mrs. Whitford? She didn't answer. The wind snatched at her pink blazer as the HOA door stayed shut. While Linda weathered the press, the second news cycle had already begun. This one centered on a quiet farmhouse and a man who kept bees. The segment opened with a slow pan across a framed USDA certificate. Apis mellifera, ligustica, Haldane strain, certified organic pollinator. The report called him the valley's hidden cornerstone, a retired entomologist whose life's work underpinned a billion-dollar harvest. They displayed his old paper, The Haldane Queen, a legacy of disease resistance. For viewers, the image hit hard. A young Robert shaking a county official's hand, the very compact that built Magnolia Ridge. But the report stopped short of that detail.
They still don't know half of it.
A colleague's soundbite echoed, if you bought an organic almond in this county, Robert Haldane's bees touched it. The contrast was now undeniable. A national expert burned out by a woman in a pink blazer who didn't know a drone from a worker. Robert watched none of it. He was already back in the field, sketching out new hive placements on a notepad. He had waited 2 decades. A few more days were nothing. The state inspector stepped to the microphone that afternoon, the seal of the Department of Agriculture behind her.
Magnolia Ridge HOA destroyed a state-sanctioned apiary. We hold the association and its president fully liable.
The certified violation notice arrived before sundown. It named both Linda Whitford and her husband as responsible parties. Mark Whitford read it twice, his face draining of color, then let the paper drop to the table.
It's over, Linda. The state hung a $4.2 million claim on our necks. We can't pay that.
We can fight. I'll get our attorney to bury them in motions. I refuse to let them win.
The board called an emergency session. They're going to vote on your presidency tonight.
Then I'll remind them who negotiated the water easements for this entire development.
The board meeting that night was a closed door, but the raised voices behind it told the whole story. She sat alone long after the room emptied. The official notice, barring the HOA's future, stamped with the state seal. The board gathered again at dawn. The state's violation notice spread before them like a live grenade. A member's voice cut through the silence. We all signed off, but this was driven by you, Linda.
I acted on safety codes. No one told me those hives were some secret contract.
A quiet board member who rarely spoke slid an old binder across the table. Has anyone actually read the original Magnolia Ridge zoning compact? She asked.
What compact? This development was zoned for residential use decades ago.
The binder fell open to a yellowed page. Article 12, Pollination Easement, underlined in red. Silence swallowed the room as they read. The maintenance of operational apiaries on Parcel 7 is a precondition for all water rights and occupancy.
That's some technical relic. It can't still be valid.
But the board's attorney, who had been silent until then, shook his head slowly. It was filed with the county. It's as binding as the concrete under our feet. State Inspector Angela Cross pulled the full compact from the county archives, the yellowed pages still smelling of old ink. Her finger stopped cold on the signature block. Prepared by Dr. Robert Haldane, consulting entomologist, the face matched the archival photo from the news segment. The compact's author was the very man whose hives she'd inspected. 22 years earlier, Robert Haldane had handed that compact to the planning board, a quiet condition buried in blueprints and legalese. She traced the core clause with a fingertip. Breach of apiary maintenance voids all water rights and occupancy permits. Angela drove straight to the Haldane farmhouse, the compact resting on her passenger seat like a loaded weapon.
Robert, you wrote this compact, the one that ties Magnolia Ridge's survival directly to your hives.
I designed it to protect the valley. The HOA agreed to it. They just forgot.
They didn't just forget. They burned the guarantee. The state can revoke their occupancy tomorrow.
Robert turned a coffee mug in his hands, the faintest shadow of a smile crossing his weathered face. Before sunrise the next day, a courier delivered identical envelopes to the Magnolia Ridge HOA office and to the Whitford home.
Revocation of certificate of occupancy. This is absurd. We're a fully built community.
Article 12 voids the water easement, Linda. Without that, our house isn't a house. It's a trespass.
She let the paper fall. $4.2 million had been a number. This was the ground disappearing under their feet. By noon, every homeowner had gotten the news. The Magnolia Ridge entrance sign bore a bright red condemned sticker. One resident voiced the panic that swept the street. Does this mean we're all trespassing on our own property? Inside the HOA office, Linda stared at a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. For the first time, she didn't know what to say.
They gave us 30 days to remediate, Linda. 30 days before they start padlocking doors.
The sign at the entrance said it all. Magnolia Ridge was no longer a neighborhood. It was a countdown, and for the first time, the Whitford name wasn't a threat. It was a curse whispered on every doorstep. The emergency town hall filled the community center beyond capacity. Every chair was taken, every aisle a wall of furious faces.
I understand your frustration, but this HOA has always put safety first.
A voice from the back cut her off. Safety? You burned our livelihoods. The room erupted. Demands for answers, for arrests, for her head.
I will not be held responsible for a technicality no one disclosed.
A board member tried to restore order, but the crowd's pulse was beyond any gavel. The chant started low, then swallowed the hall. Resign. Resign. Resign.
I did nothing wrong. I was elected to protect this community.
But no one was listening. Linda Whitford stood alone before the people she'd promised to lead. Her hands gripped the podium as the chant grew louder, and for the first time, no one rose to defend her. The side door opened without a sound, and the crowd didn't notice until the footsteps stopped. Robert Haldane stood at the back of the hall, flannel sleeves rolled, the faint smell of wood smoke still on his clothes. One by one, heads turned. The chant died in their throats as they recognized the man they'd heard about. He walked to the microphone as if he'd been expected, and the silence that followed was heavier than the shouting.
I didn't come to gloat. I came to offer a way out. My conditions are simple. The HOA board is dissolved and reformed without Linda Whitford. Second, the state's revocation is lifted on my signature, restoring your water rights and occupancy. And third, I reissue hive licenses on my own terms. Fair rates, no interference.
Never! I won't let some beekeeper dictate terms to my community.
But behind her, the silent faces of her neighbors said the opposite. They were already weighing his terms. Mark Whitford moved through the crowd and took his wife by the arm, his face ghost white.
Linda, the lawyer just sent me the estimate. If we fight, the legal fees alone will bankrupt us.
I will not grovel to that man. I am the president of this HOA.
You are about to be the president of nothing. He holds our deed, our water, our future. Then I will grovel for us, for our house, our savings, our marriage.
Linda's jaw tightened, her pride warring with the cold arithmetic of survival.
I could sign his paper and save my family. Or I could burn the last bridge standing.
For a single breath, her hand moved toward the door handle. Then her eyes hardened again.
Get off me. I'll show them all.
Mark let his hands drop. The hallway swallowed his whisper, but the fracture in their marriage had already become a canyon. Linda shoved through the double doors and marched back to the podium, the hush splitting around her like water. Before she could speak, a board member stepped to the microphone and looked out at the crowd, all in favor of removing Linda Whitford as HOA president and accepting Robert Haldane's terms. Raise your hand.
You have no right. I built this community.
Hands rose. First a few, then a dozen, then a sea of them stretching from the front row to the back wall. Linda's face drained of color, her knuckles white around the podium edge. Robert sat motionless on a metal folding chair near the exit, his arms folded, watching the democracy unfold. The board chair began to count, his finger moving across the rows.
This is a joke. You'll all be sorry when the lawsuits land.
The count paused. The room inhaled as one. The final tally came in low and hard, 87-4.
You'll regret this, every last one of you.
The deputies moved in, and Linda Whitford was pulled, still shrieking, from the podium she had commanded for 6 years.
Linda, please, just walk out with some dignity.
She didn't spare him a glance. Her heels snapped against the tile as the double doors swung shut behind her. The room exhaled. Then the board chair turned to Robert, his voice still unsteady. Mr. Haldane, your terms are accepted. The HOA is dissolved effective immediately.
Then let's get to work. We've got an orchard to save.
The room erupted again, but this time it wasn't fury. It was the raw, shaking sound of relief. Linda Whitford's reign ended the way it started, with a burn order and a beekeeper who refused to blink. At dawn, Robert sat at a folding table with Tom Aldrich and Angela Cross, the new compact spread before them.
This contract binds us together again. The apiary stays, and the orchards will bloom.
Certification reinstated. Magnolia Ridge is no longer condemned.
By noon, flatbed trucks rolled onto the Haldane acreage, loaded with fresh white hive boxes. The state's revocation order was lifted by executive priority. The red condemned sticker peeled from the entrance sign before sunset. Neighbors who had shouted, "Resign," now formed a line to shake Robert's hand under the newly repainted Community Hall banner.
You gave us back our harvest. The co-op won't forget that.
The new HOA board was sworn in the same evening, 7 residents who had never held office. Their first motion, a unanimous vote to protect the apiary in perpetuity. By week's end, the first new queens were laying, and the sound of bees filled the valley again.
This is what victory sounds like.
The orchards responded like a wound healing. Petals opened across 1,000 acres, and the bees followed. The evening news captured the turnaround in a single graphic. The pollination index had climbed back to 98%. A chiron ran across the bottom. Almond harvest saved, valued at $4.2 million. One street over from the HOA entrance, a different sign told the other half of the story. Linda Whitford's home bore a realtor's sold sign, the windows dark, the driveway empty. No moving announcement, no farewell party. She had slipped out before sunrise, the day after the vote. Robert Haldane saw none of it. He sat on his farmhouse porch, a mug cooling in his hands, the apiary humming below.
Everything back in its place. The bees, the orchard, the quiet.
He didn't smile often, but the corner of his mouth lifted just enough. Magnolia Ridge was quiet again, but tonight it was the kind of quiet that meant peace. At first light, a single figure loaded the last suitcase into the back of a sedan. No helper, no goodbye. She shut the trunk with more force than needed, the echo bouncing off the empty garage. The sedan moved through the streets, past the turn where the apiary boundary began. At the Haldane Apiary's sign, she slowed, not by plan, but by reflex. From the driver's window, she saw him, Robert Haldane, bent over a hive, a marked queen between his fingers. He looked up at the sound of the engine, and for 3 heartbeats, their eyes locked. No wave, no sneer, just the slow return of his attention to the bees, as if she were already gone. Her jaw set, and the sedan surged forward, the apiary shrinking in the rear view. In the field, Robert placed the new queen into the hive without breaking rhythm. The valley already had a new queen, and the work of spring continued undisturbed. The sunset washed the apiary in amber and rose, the white hives glowing like lanterns across the field. A wooden sign at the drive read, "Haldane Apiaries, by appointment only," freshly painted. Robert Haldane sat on the porch, a chipped mug cooling in his hands. The evening hum of the bees was a steady pulse against the quiet. He looked out across the hives, each box a living testament to patience.
His grandfather would have understood this moment. The ledgers, the compact, all of it leading here.
He set the mug down and leaned back, the creak of the chair a familiar comfort. He didn't smile often, but the corner of his mouth lifted just enough. The valley was at peace, and for the first time in weeks, so was he. In the deepening twilight, the bees settled, and Robert Haldane allowed himself a single quiet moment of victory.